So, hey everybody, this is Vernier for CardHunters.com, and this is a session that I recorded many weeks ago, maybe like 6 weeks ago or so. So it's going to be interesting to see how my thoughts, I guess today, are going to correspond with the plays that I made a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember much about this section except for maybe one or two hands that stand out, but up here, it's a pretty standard open with ace-4 suited in the cutoff versus players who seem really tight on the blinds. But now I'm being 3-bet by somebody who's playing 10-3 and is hardly ever 3-betting 0%. So it's going to be pretty easy fold. 7-10. If players are playing really tight, you might open it, but I probably wouldn't advocate opening a hand like 7-10 suited in early position. But with players who are playing, this guy in 10 hands, Little Donnie, has yet to play a hand, and then Lily P in 59 hands is playing 12-5, and then Tom JD in 10 hands or in 11 hands has only played one hand. These are all, this is a pretty nitty table. Unless Cry and Smile decides to, or I mean, as long as he stays, it's going to be okay because he's playing fairly loose. But right now, it's not looking like it's the kind of table where I'm going to be getting a lot of action. 9-10 suited up on table 3. First, somebody who's playing 43-43. I could bet just to see how he responds to 3-bets. I could also call, and I could fold. A lot of these things depend on how this player responds to being 3-bet. If it's somebody, this is somebody who's stealing 50% of the hands, so by default, it means they're going to be opening a really wide range from the button to steal. And before I finish my thought, I think I could be profitable opening up any two hands, any two cards against these blinds here. With a limp, I'm certainly not going to do it, but going back to the 9-10 suited hand versus somebody who is stealing so much, I think 3-betting is going to be profitable as long as they fold a reasonable amount. If they're opening a lot and they're never folding, then hands like 9-10 suited have a lot more value if I just flat call. Now, if they're not stealing a lot versus somebody who's playing like 11, 5, 8, then a hand like 9-10 suited, and they're opening, from even from the button, you could certainly fold that. This is the second time Lily P is 3-betting me. I think at this point I would still fold it because if I 4-bet here, I just got, this is the second time they're 3-betting me, so they're a lot more likely to have a hand this time around at these stakes. So I do hope I fold here, but other than that, I think I could try a 4-bet, something like $7, but I prefer a fold here. Down here, somebody's limping on the button who's playing 40-20. I'm raising them up with Queen 10 offsuit. It's certainly not a standard play, but I think I'm going to good. I'm glad I folded up here. But two Broadway cards like that, I'm going to be able to continuation bet a lot of flops, and I'm going to be able to hit. I'm going to hit a queen or a 10. And I'm going to have a pretty good kicker about 32% of the time. I had one of my students earlier who had pocket fours and raised in a similar situation, but it's just going to be a lot harder to play a hand like pocket fours if you raise pre-flop versus a hand like queen 10. And even if you hit some broadways, and even if you miss, you're going to be able to continuation bet and take down a lot of flops. And the ones that you don't, you're probably going to have some kind of a gut shot, and it's much better to isolate limp or soak hands like queen 10, even offsuit. than with hands like pocket fours or even pocket fives. So standard open with ace queen suited, of course, here. And depending on how the action goes, I think queen 10 suited is strong enough to call a re-raise from somebody like Gladstone 87, who's played a third of his hand so far. Now here, NJ Do is playing 11-0 over 9 hands, so he's yet to play a hand. I think because I am opening in late position, I certainly don't mind seeing a flop here. Now, Queen 10 suited is a hand that is sometimes going to be dominated by ace king, but I'm certainly not looking to play for stacks if I hit an ace or a king. But here I chose to fold it because the player's playing 11-0. If I would have called there and played in position, I don't think it's a huge leak, but I don't think folding first time your 3-bet is going to be that bad either. The other thing to consider is I did open from late position, so it could be seen more of a steal. I think if I open from early position and I'm 3-bet from the blinds by a similar player, then it's going to be a pretty trivial fold. But because it is from late position and because it's suited, I would have been fine calling that too. Your equity goes up about 4 or 5 points just from suitedness, so that's something to consider. But yeah, I don't. It's interesting watching the video a couple of weeks after I filmed it and just trying to evaluate how I would have played some things. So I'm not even sure what I'm going to be doing in these situations, and it's going to be up to me to justify this. Ace 7 suited, it's a hand that's going to be dominated. On the other hand, it's only 50 cents to play a multi-way pot in position, so I would lean towards folding this at the micros because you're just not going to hit. You're looking to hit a flush draw or trips, and specifically trip 7. So I'm not crazy about it. I think a hand like Ace Jack suited, uh, I would look to call here. Ace Queen suited, I would look to call Ace Queen offsuit probably too. Here, I hope I raise that up to like $1.50, which I do end up doing to isolate the short stack and the limper. Happy Mondays is playing tight, but I mean, he certainly can't be strong enough. So it looks like I do choose to call here, and the reason I call is because I'm hoping for a multi-way pot. So with a limper and a min raise, I'm never gonna lose a big stack, and I'm gonna be able to play in position. So I think calling is fine. I think folding is fine too. So here I raise pre-flop, and I actually think my bet size, if I do bet 225, I think that's too big. One of the things I've been looking and advocating to a bunch of my students is continuation betting a little bit more. I mean, on this kind of a flop, he's either going to continue or he's not going to continue. So I think a bet of $1.75 is going to be much better than a bet of 225. I think 225 is too much. Here on table 1, the ace 7 suited, once it's checked around to me, I'm certainly going to take a stab at it. Nobody else seems to want it. I'm going to bet like, I think $1.50 is too much too. I think like $1.25 will get the job done just as well as $1.50. But they both fold. But in both cases, I think I'm risking too much, and it's flops where they're not going to pay attention to my bet size as much as their hand. So yeah, that's why I advocate betting a little bit less, because if they do like their hand, then they're going to continue. And I mean, with the ace queen down here, I'm pretty much done. And with the ace 7 up here, if I get any kind of action, I'm done in both cases. Here, I'm not sure if I misclicked by min raising or if that's what I did. I do like raising a little bit less from late position, so I think min raise might be a little bit too little. I would go between 60 and 75 cents here. But I think the reason I'm raising less here is because the button seems pretty passive, or not passive but tight. Um, and I'm just looking to pick up the blinds. Here versus an early position raiser with the ace three. Well, now that it's three, but I'm just going to fold. But it's a hand that I'm going to be three betting or folding. I'm probably not going to be calling there. Got the short stack leads out for 75 cents. Yeah, I think anything other than calling, I think raising is unnecessary because, I mean, I actually have a legitimate hand. Once he leads again on the turn, with another card coming, um, I think I actually probably should have just called again, but I do end up folding. I think my hand is just too weak to continue there. I don't even have a good kicker on my 9. I think if I have like king 9, well, king 9 I have added equity, but I think with a hand like 8-9, it's just a little bit too weak. So here, since I'm on the button with king 6 suited, I'm going to be raising it up. If the big blind is playing aggressively, I'm going to be folding the king 6 suited. If he's playing loose but passive, and his aggression factor is 7, but he also hasn't really 3-bet me. So if it's one of those short stacks that's just going to be shoving a lot, then I'm not going to be playing hand like king 6 suited. But if he's going to be letting me steal, then I'm certainly gonna continue there. But evaluating the table, I've got Happy Mondays doesn't seem to be playing a lot of hands, but I'm also not. I don't really see too many huge fish at the table. The one player who's playing 35-0 is a short stack, so I would much rather be sitting on something like $16. And up here on table 2, I've actually been playing a lot more shorthanded. I've actually been looking to play like 3 and 4-handed because I think that a lot of players playing at the smaller and micro stakes are not very good once it gets really shorthanded, like heads up and maybe even 3-handed. So I actually, I'd, I would probably prefer to stay at this table, but I might decide that Caltree and how would you say this, Eden Sargent or something, that they're both reasonable. So I'm just gonna leave. Mad Donkfest is playing really loose, so I 3-bet him just to see how he reacts. I think it's important to, I'm going to pause it and talk about this for a second. I think with hands like 9-10 offsuit, 3-bet just for the sake of 3-betting to see how people react. There he insta-folded, which is good to know. If he tanks and he folds, that means he's going to be thinking about he's just going to be thinking about what to do. But like I said, 3-bet somebody just to kind of see what their default line is. So then you can start adjusting your range to when to actually 3-bet them for value or whether to 3-bet them as a bluff or things like that. I'm going to be talking a lot more about 3-betting in the next video. It's going to be a theory video with examples specifically about situations to 3-bet. Here, King 4, I'm probably going to be opening up until I see otherwise. I'm going to be opening up a lot of cards because we've got this Wuha player who's playing 15-10 and has yet to 3-bet me. And this is the 0 is the 3-betting. And then Gladstone 87, until he starts 3-betting me, I'm going to start stealing his buttons because he seems like, or stealing his blinds because he seems like a reasonable card owner's type of player. I actually get a feeling he's going to 3-bet me here in a second. But until they start defending a little bit lighter, then I'm going to So I make a note. I look up that he's two tabling. So this is actually not a bad spot to 4-bet, but because he's only playing 2 tables and seems to be like a reasonable regular, then I'm just gonna give it credit the first time around. Here with the Queen 10, I decide to complete versus an early position limper. Just less likely to try to isolate out of position. If you link the button, then 50-50 between until I get any other reads. It's going to be 50-50 between whether isolate or just complete. I think Queen 10 offsuit is just a little bit too strong to be folding in the small blind. Although I do advocate playing tight in the small blind. So here, pretty standard open with these players in the blinds. It seems to be a pretty passive table 3. But even with a table as passive as it is, I think King 9 offsuit is a little bit too weak to open. Here I folded 8-10 suited on the button versus a player who's playing 24-12. I don't hate any of the options. I don't hate calling. I don't hate folding. I don't hate 3-betting. We still don't know how he reacts to being 3-bet, but I think Queen 10 suited plays well versus any of those options. On a flop like 6-6-9, I would probably flat call almost always. I think I can represent a much wider range by flat calling a flop like 9-6-6. So for one, I actually have a gutter to a straight, but I can just represent a much wider range. So here I flop on table 2. I flopped 2 pair in a limped pot, and it's a bottom 2 pair. I'm not really crazy about it, but I am gonna raise mostly to protect my hand. So as I was saying about 3-bet pots, this guy's playing 40% of the hands, and I could certainly 3-bet him. Just to see how he reacts. So I think So Sick Dude is a regular, but it's good to get a feeling of where people are. Now, one of the things I'm going to talk about, so just to kind of give a preview of the 3-betting video, one of the things to consider is whether somebody's a regular and whether somebody's is a good competent player, because you should be a lot more willing to 3-bet regulars with a wider range, because one, they're probably playing more than one table, and B, you can actually establish some history versus some random unknown. So somebody who's playing like this, A is DIM, is playing 26-9, seems fairly loose, fairly touristy, doesn't even have a full stack, is stealing 0%. So that's what this number down here is. Versus a player like that, you just really shouldn't be looking to 3-bet that light, because they're just looking to play. When they get re-raised, they're certainly willing to take a flop. Versus somebody like this Gladstone 87, seems to have very reasonable numbers. This is a player that you could look to start making some plays against. Same with this Davo DV. So even after 25 hands, you can get a fairly good idea of the kind of players that they are. And both of these guys seem like the card hunters type player. And these are the guys that you could start getting into some 3-betting battles with. Now, once they start playing back at you, then you've got to adjust your strategy. But these are the kind of guys that are going to be, they'll probably respect position, and it's just they know that they're going to be stealing. They know they should be stealing a lot, and they should be stealing a lot. So in order to combat that, 3-betting is one way to get back at frequent stealers. This 7-9 offsuit, I'm going to be raising just because the player in the blinds is playing 12-8. And so I guess against a player like that, um, three betting an A2, or not three betting, but stealing his blinds is going to be profitable. Um, Here with the pocket sixes, I don't mind a limp behind, but um, I think sixes are just strong enough to isolate. I think I would have preferred it if I was on the button and he limped on the cutoff, but I think raising there is fine, and I think limping behind is fine too. It just depends how they respond to. Are they the kind of player that's going to limp call and then look to put moves on you on the flop? If he's the kind of player that's going to limp call and put moves on you on the flop, then I'm probably going to be limping behind and trying to hit my set. If he's the kind of player that's going to limp call and fold a lot of flops, then I'm going to look to isolate. I'm also going to look to people behind me. If there's people that are re-raising and re-isolating a lot from the blind side, I'm going to look to just limp my sixes behind and try to see a cheap flop. If they're the kind of players that are just going to fold once I isolate, then I'm much more likely to isolate myself. So I guess all of these things. I mean, there's really no right answer on whether you should isolate or limp behind pocket sixes to an early position limper. I think you should consider all these factors that I mentioned. And in some situations, it makes more sense to limp behind. In some situations, it makes more sense to isolate. I think twos, threes, and fours, I would almost always limp behind them because they're just too weak. Um, Unless the player's folding to a lot of isolations. So we're moving right along. I don't think we've seen really that many flops. I mean, the one flop we've seen is sorry, I was thinking about that hand that I just put up. The one flop we've seen is the one where we flat call on the button with a 7 suited to a min raise from the cutoff, and we knew we would have position, and we figured we would probably have a multi-way pot. So here it looks like he flat called. He flat called King 9 in the blinds, and then yeah, $1.25 is just too much. So I think I'm continuation betting too much here. I think I should bet something like, I would say maybe like 90 cents on that flop, because he's either going to continue or he's not going to continue. All right, so he flat calls. I think at this point his range could be, he could have a flush draw, he could have some kind of a straight draw himself, he could have a 10, and he could have a queen. So I'm going to bet again. I think he might even have some like pocket nines or ace high. So I'm going to bet again. I actually like a bet of like 205, and I like it for a couple of reasons. It could fold out ace high, which I'm behind, and he could call with a flush draw. And in addition, it kind of sets my own price for drawing myself. So I'm going to definitely value bet any kind of ace and any kind of 9, probably any kind of king that comes. With a jack, I could certainly block or bet a jack on the river because his range leans a lot more towards a 10 than it does towards a queen. But I like a bet of like $2 on the start, bet about half the pot. If I bet any more than that, it's just unnecessarily much. I guess I could check raise too, but so 235 is too much. Like I said, I like betting like $2 on the turn there. Once he min raises, um, the reason I fold is because I only have, first of all, it's a paired board, so I could already be drawing dead. And second of all, he could have some kind of flush draw that he's now raising on the turn, although it's very, very unlikely. I think with the blocker bet that I had on the turn, he's not going to raise a flush draw. I think I'm giving him a good enough price to call, but he could certainly do it. So I could already be drawing dead. He could have, or if he has a flush draw, I could be drawing a 6 queen outs, at which point I'm still not going to get paid off. So I just like to bet fold the turn, even though I have a legitimate draw. And down here on table 3, I've got pocket jacks. Blind on blind, I'm certainly going to isolate. And good draw heavy flop for me. He leads right into me for $4. This could be, I'm not even sure what it could be, but I'm certainly going to raise and get it all in. It's a 3-bet pot. It's blind on blind. I mean, he could have anything. He could have bottom set, but since I'm so awesome, I hit runner straight and I give him a bad beat post flop. But I can't think of any other way to play that hand. So I do apologize, and I say, well played on the flop, because by leading into me, I certainly, I mean, I can't put him on a set there. And I'm certainly not folding an overpair at these stakes, heads up in a 3-bet pot. But I am going to make a note that he did call pocket fives. To blind on blind 3-bet, and then led for a close to pot on a 5-7-9. I should put spade board there. So it gives me an idea of the kind of player that he is, or starts giving me an idea. I don't like his lead. I mean, I told him well played, but I think at the time, you know, I certainly thought it was well played in the fact that there's no way I could have put him on a set. But I think versus my range, I think leading there, I'm going to have so many hands which are not strong enough to continue there that I think by leading he's missing too much value. I think he needs to check there, or I think that, I mean, that's the thing, like that's the reason why playing pocket fives is not going to be profitable out of position, especially blind on blind, because there's just no, it's just going to be so hard to get paid off, and it's going to be, first of all, you're only going to hit like 12% of the time, and second of all, you're just not going to get paid off often enough. So that's why he needs to be either folding or 4-betting if I'm getting out of line. And I'm playing 14-14 at this table. Granted, I'm 3-betting 18%, but I'm still playing 14-14. So versus a player like that, he just needs to fold pocket fives pre-flop there. Up here on table 4, so sick dude 3-bets me. We're about 100 big blinds deep. Actually, we're exactly 100 big blinds deep. He's playing 29-29 and 3-betting 38%. So in this situation, I'm going to be 4-betting and getting it in. It's just a matter of whether I'm going to 4-bet shove or whether I'm going to 4-bet small. And I can't remember what I do. But pots, so I do end up 4-betting small to 725 with the intention of calling it off if he does shove. I'm not crazy about my hand if he shoves, because he is 3-betting me from the blinds. But versus a player who's playing 29-29 over 34 hands and is playing is 3-betting, which we now see 44% of the hands. I just can't imagine folding ace king. And in fact, I think anytime you decide to 4-bet for value, 4-betting and then folding is pretty terrible, especially with 100 big blind stacks. So there I made the decision that my hand is strong enough versus his range to get it all in pre-flop. So because of that, I do 4-bet for value with the intention of getting it in. If he shows me aces, then, you know, sometimes players who play 31-31 wake up with aces, and what can you do? You chalk it up to a cooler. If he has anything else, I've got pretty good equity against it. Even with a hand like versus a hand like pocket kings, I think I have roughly around 30% equity. So given all the money in the pot, I haven't exactly done the calculations of that, but I think it's going to be pretty close on whether I'm actually mathematically correct, even if I knew that he had pocket kings after he shoved and after I invested about a third of my stack to call it off. But versus his whole range, certainly have the equity to call a shove. Now, if I had a hand like ace queen, I'm probably going to be calling to his 3-bet just because I don't know enough about him. Ace queen suited, I certainly will be calling. Jacks, 10s, I will be. 9s, I'm not sure. Well, I mean, 9s, 10s, and jacks are pretty much just very, very similar hands, but I think some of the medium pocket pairs, I would say like 6s, yeah, I guess even 6s through 9s, I'm probably better off folding at that spot. And sometimes, yeah, I think 10s, 9s, 10s, and jack. I'd probably flat call and see a flop. But he does seem to be really active. The one thing about the hand was, you know, I did open from early position, and he did 3-bet me out of the blinds. If I was opening from late position, or even like from middle position, and he 3-bets me from the button, I think I would be a lot more willing to 4-bet for value lighter. Like 4-bet with a hand like 10 with the intentions of getting it in. But it's, I mean, that's the thing. Like, whenever you have a player that's so active and they're 3-betting you a lot, it's it does force you to tighten up. So it forces you to tighten up your general opening range, but you do still. But then to kind of counter that, you have to open up your 4-betting and 4-betting and calling it off for value range. So if somebody's 3-betting you a lot and they're doing it when they're on the button and you're in the cutoff, I don't think that happens too often at these stakes, but hands like pocket 9s suddenly become really nice hands to be able to get it all in. So here I open 9-10, or up on table 2, I open Jack-10 offsuit under the gun. And the reason for that is this Daniel Farrell guy, my hand plays pretty well against his range, and everybody else is playing so tight. I mean, everybody else is a VPIP of 12 or lower. So, given that, I'm going to treat it kind of the way I would if I was playing him heads up, and I would open Jack-10 offsuit heads up. It's probably not going to be that profitable of a table for me. And granted, yeah, I've got the position on the fish, but I would much rather have more than one fish at the table. So it looks like I'm already looking for another table. And then up on table 2, ace-4 suited, certainly a standard hand to isolate his limp with. So heads up, this is the hand that I'm going to be opening. And Gladstone 3-bets me again. And I think enough time has passed between the last time he 3-bet me and this time around to where I am going to 4-bet him and see how he reacts. So I'm going to make it, I think 750 might be a little bit too much. Well, actually, never mind. I think it's about right because double his bet would be a little bit less than 6. I actually think 650 would be better. I think 750 might be too much. But I think it's a good spot to 4-bet him because I haven't quite. So he's thinking here. He seems like a good thinking player. So, if he's sitting on pocket eights here, what does he do? If he's sitting on ace queen, is he willing to shove? I'm just going to test him and see where he is and then get a sense of how he reacts to this and then play him accordingly in the future. Now, like I said, this is something that I will do versus players that I perceive as competent and regulars. I certainly think you can go all throughout the micros without ever 4-betting somebody light, but I just felt like this was the spot where this could be a profitable spot for me to do so. I actually don't remember. I don't remember if he shoves and I think he either shoves or folds here. I don't think he flat calls. Here, certainly going to be re-isolating with pocket queens on table 3 to Devo and playing for stacks. He's playing 22-20, so his isolation raise of an early position limper is going to be really wide. Now that he thought about it so long, I actually think that, okay, so I thought he was going to shove. And this is a really interesting spot on table 3 because now this fridge 1988 cold, let me think. So we've got a limper, we have a raise, we have a 3-bet. So he called 4-bets me. And it's 280 for me to play. And he has about 40 bucks behind. So just a rough estimate. I think if I had any kind of pair here, I'm getting odds to play for set value. I do think he's insanely strong here. I think his range here is aces, kings, and I actually don't know how he plays ace king suited, but he could have ace king suited here. So I think queens here effectively are just like pocket deuces in the sense that I'm going to play him strictly for set value, especially that I'm playing 13-13 and he's playing 17-17. So and we're really deep and it's the micro stakes. So I'm going to play these queens for set value, and I do think that because I'm in position, I am going to have the odds to do so. I'm in position, we're deep enough to do so. I think if we had 100 big blinds, I think I would just fold my queens here at the micro stakes, given the action. So Dave is saying Fridge has queens. I think if Fridge had queens, it would be a really bad play by him. I think flat calling with queens there would probably be his best bet, especially how deep we are. But I guess I'm just thinking about what to do. And I do end up flat calling, and I hit the magical set of queens. Like I said, I think if I miss, I would just fold here. So now he bets 12. With 3 to a flush, I still think that he has aces and king. I think at this point, I think he has aces and kings specifically. So I'm just gonna shove, and I think hope for no spade. So he's got the aces with the ace of spades, and he bangs on a brick. So LOL poker. But I think the pre-flop discussion was much more, I guess, interesting and beneficial than whatever happened post-flop. Post-flop, the hand plays itself on both parts. So he's got an overpair with the nut flush draw, and he's certainly correct to play the way he did. He essentially min-raised me pre-flop, so I thought his pre-flop raise size um, was not good because it only cost me $2.80 more cents to essentially play a $93 pot, um, versus somebody who's got a pretty well-defined range in that situation. So mathematically, I'm okay playing like that. So he needs to make it probably, I made it 310. He probably needs to make it like 925 or something like that. Him making it, whatever he made it, 6 something it's just too little. Definitely gave me my, you know, 10 to 1 odds or whatever, because he had 40 bucks behind. It was 280 more for me to call. But he won the hand, so I guess he played it correctly. Ace 10 suited versus a limper like that. Like we talked about earlier, those suited Broadway cards are going to be good enough to isolate. If I had an ace or a 10, I'm going to like my hand. And then, of course, kings are going to be good enough to isolate. Here, blind on blind. I choose not to isolate once he limps with my ace 2. But once he checks it to me, I'm going to continue. King 9, if the limper was maybe the button, I could isolate, but King 9 is just a little bit, I would say just a little bit too weak, and King 9 suited I like to see a flop with, so I'll probably just call. If it was like King Jack suited and the limper was in late position, could certainly isolate even from the blinds. Just because it's going to be profitable. Like, you'll probably take it down pre-flop, and if not, then you can continuation bet the flop. With tight blinds, I think raising any 2 is going to be profitable, especially if they're suited and fairly connected. 6, 7, 8 gives me a straight, so I can even have a straight possibility there. I don't think I need to pot it. I think even if I make, like I said, between 60 and 75 cents, they're going to be playing their hands for face value. One of the things that I've done recently, which I don't have at this point, is I have a row of stats, and I guess in my next video you'll see my new. I've got the blinds broken down on how often they defend their blinds and how they defend their blinds. So how often they fold steals, like 90%, 80%, and then how often do they 3-bet versus a late position raise. So does their blind defense consist of a lot of flat calling, or does their blind defend consist with a lot of 3-betting? So and then depending on what it is, I'm gonna play accordingly. So here's So Sick Dude, 3-bets from the blinds, or from 3-bets in position by a player who's playing 15, 11, and Njdu, I can't even pronounce it, like insta just all in shoves on him. I think the fact that he's even thinking about it is kind of funny. Like, I just wonder what his calling range there would be. I think NJ Do can 4-bet shove there with a really wide range and have it be profitable, just because So Sick is 3-betting so much. Yeah, so I'm gonna make some changes in my HUD for the next video, and I was actually thinking about having a video where instead of tiling my tables the way I have now, they're all cascaded. So I would like to get some feedback on that. whether basically that's the way I've been playing on stars. I've been playing, I guess, between uh, 8 and 16 tables on stars. I've been mixing some heads up if I can get a good heads up game going. But that 6 max and full ring, and I've been tiling, or not tiling, I've been cascading like all my 6 max tables kind of in one corner and all my full ring tables in another corner. And then if I'm playing shorthanded, like heads up or 3 or 4 handed, and there's just a lot of action, I'll put that table um, at like the bottom left or the bottom right, and then tables I'm looking for specifically, I'll put in the bottom left. Or if there's a hand that is especially interesting, then I'll go bottom left again. So yeah, if this is something I could try, I don't know whether it would be easier to follow or it would be harder to follow, but I mean it's certainly something we can try. On table 3, we have an early position raise from a player that I don't know, and I flat call with 6s, and which I guess it's pretty reasonable. Let me see what kind of a stack size he has. And then we get 3-bet by somebody who's playing 7-7. So they squeeze, and I don't think I have the odds to call against either of them, so I'm just going to fold. I think if one or both of them were deeper, then I would certainly continue. So it's kind of an interesting hand. It comes Queen Jack 8. I do remember the hand, I just don't remember what I did. And Flanny continuation bets about 475 into 7. And check raises all in on the turn after flopping the nuts. I really like this play. I mean, he's playing 7-7. Now he's playing 10-10. But certainly seems like he's aware of spots to be squeezing with and situations to be squeezing with. So he did get lucky in that he flopped the nuts. But nonetheless, I think his play is good. On the other hand, I think depending on I think versus regulars, his play would be good there. A lot of it depends on what his read on Mary Vick is. If Mary Vick is a spew monkey and playing really loose, and I think he actually is going to end up being kind of a loose passive player, then I like his play less because he's going to get called a lot. But nonetheless, I think pre-flop he played it okay, and I think on the flop he played it fine. And if you have a player that's playing really tight, that has plays like that in his arsenal, it's going to be really dangerous to play against him. So if Flanny Flock is a Card Hunters member, hats off to you, sir. But as the session goes along, we do find out that Mary Vick does have numbers that approach something like 67, 30, 0.5, and against a player like that, 3-betting is not going to be profitable. But against a lot of standard players, that's a great spot to be squeezing. And squeezing is going to end up being very profitable in general. So, yeah, that's something I think we've talked about a little bit too. But basically, you just get a much better deal on, you risk less in order to win more whenever you squeeze. It's just finding good situations to do so. I don't know how much I would recommend squeezing at the micros without a read. I mean, obviously, it all comes down to what kind of a read you have on a player. And I guess the reason people say to play standard at the micros, and I'm certainly more and more in that camp as I play and as I watch my students play, is because there's just not enough regulars for you to develop a read on them. And players that have reasonable stats, like versus somebody like A's DIM, who's playing a short stack and is playing 27-6. There's no need to do anything but play premium cards in position or play quality cards in position, and then value bet whenever you hit your hand. And if you're going to bluff, make sure your bluffs are cheap, as in like continuation bet on good flops. But versus players where you develop a little bit more of a read, like I did with this Gladstone 87 player when I 4-bet him earlier. Um, I would never do that without a little bit of history and a little bit of an understanding of what kind of a player that the player is. So we're starting to slowly come to the end. There's about maybe, I'm probably going to do maybe 4 more minutes of footage or so and make it like a 45 or 50-minute video. So, um, Queen 9 up here, I think it's a little bit too weak to isolate. Pre-flop, isolate the limper. I mean, it's heads up, and if I saw somebody isolate a limper with that, if the limper would fold to a lot of raises pre-flop or fold on a lot of flops, I certainly wouldn't mind it, but I don't mind checking the data. I think checking there is pretty standard. But yeah, I think my next video is going to be on stars, and I think it's going to be it could be, I think I'm going to go back to playing 10 no limit. So here I'm thinking about bet sizing, and the reason I'm going to bet, once again, I kind of like the smaller bet size, but the reason I bet so big here is because this player is playing 40-10, 40-10-1, so he seems really loose and he seems really passive. And I think if he has any kind of a draw, he's going to continue on this flop, and I'm just going to be able to continue building a pot there. So, but I think if I missed, I would have bet something like $1.25, and I don't think this player is going to be good enough to recognize or play with me long enough to recognize that I bet, significantly smaller in situations where I miss and situations where I hit. I think if it was a drier flop, if it was I didn't have the flush and didn't have a straight draw, I might end up looking to bet less. But I actually like a bet of about 125 instead of 165 there. Here, I have the odds on table 1. I have the odds to call with pocket fours in a multi-way pot. And I do end up doing so. And I'm going to do something that I guess a lot of players don't do at the micros is I'm going to lead this. And the reason I'm going to lead this is because I don't want it to get checked through. I think little Donnie is going to I think if I check raise this flop, it's just going to look insanely strong. I certainly could check raise it, but I'm going to choose to lead it, and I hope I lead it small. I hope I lead it for like $1.50. Kind of make it like a donkish play. I think that's too much. I don't hate my line, but I don't like my bet size because I think it's just going to be too hard for little Donnie to continue with a hand like. I think with nines through jacks, he's going to continue. I think if he has any kind of aces, kings, or queen, well, aces, kings, obviously queens. I think queens he flag calls. I think aces and kings he's going to raise me. But I would prefer to bet small there and hope he raises me, and then hope Brian just does something crazy like spaz out. But that's a little bit too much hoping. I think checking it is okay, and I think c-betting less is fine too. But they all call, which is good. On the turn, once they call, I should bet something like $4. 5 is fun. I think six, yeah, I think I'm just betting too much. My line just looks insanely strong. I actually don't mind a check on here too, but now it's just me and the fish. And he ended up having queen 10, from what I remember. But yeah, so I don't hate my line, but I do hate my bet sizing. Because on the turn, once I do that, then little Johnny, if he has nines, tens, or jacks, it's just going to be really hard for him to continue. So basically, I'm just like praying that he has aces or kings, maybe like a hand like ace queen. But nonetheless, I think my line is way too strong to. Uh, yeah, I think my line's way too strong for me to try to extract value out of little Donnie there. Here on table one, the reason I choose to limp these pocket sixes is because I want Brian I want to keep him in, and I don't want to fold to Tom Jade, and hoping little Donnie decides to complete, and then I can play a four-way pot with pocket sixes in position. So, but no set, very drivey board. um, Once they both check, I could take a stab at it. I probably should have stabbed like 45 cents in order to keep myself from getting what could effectively be 12 outed. Once they both check now, I'm going to take a stab at it. And on the river, I'm not even going to bother. He probably has like an 8. Yeah, so he had king 8. But I do think I should take a stab on the flop. And if anybody calls, just be done with it. But Brian just played this pretty passively, which I guess is fine. I mean, he extracted money out of me. But yeah, like I said, I like betting the flop because I'm guessing one of them, I would say between the two of them, they probably have 3 over cards. So that's like 12 outs going into the turn against me. So I would rather protect myself from that. No, I'm sorry, 9 outs. All right, I'll play a couple more hands and then we'll call it a video. And like I alluded to earlier, we're going to do the video on the fundamentals of 3-betting. So again, on this flop, I think $1.50 is too much. I should bet something like $1.25. I mean, he either has a 6, a jack, and a flush draw, and he's going to continue, or he has nothing, and he's just going to fold. All right, so yeah, it's interesting how kind of my views on bet sizing, and the main reason my views have changed on bet sizing as much as they have is I've been reviewing and coaching a lot of micro and low stakes players recently, and it's just one of the things that I've noticed, or sitting and reflecting on it, uh, and commenting on their play. I've been reviewing a lot of their videos. It's just one of those spots where I feel like a lot of people are leaking money, and certainly a couple of weeks after having watched this video, I definitely see that as the case in my video as well. And this is another one of those situations where my bet size is just too much because he either has a piece of this and is going to continue, or he doesn't and he's not. So betting something like $1.15 on this flop accomplishes just as much as betting $1.50, where he's either going to fold or he's going to call. But you'll actually see all these adjustments that I'm going to make after this video in the next one. So I don't want you to take away that the information I give you in this video is faulty, because like I said, I've corrected a lot of these things, and I've noticed a lot of these things as being a little bit leaky, but I guess just understand why why I've chosen to make these adjustments for the future from this video versus um, yeah, I guess just how my play has changed. Like I said, a lot of that came from just watching a lot of micro stakes and low stakes players play and seeing spots where they were consistently losing money. All right, so for card runners, this is Vernier, and I'll see you guys next week.